Hello, Gary.
Hello, Guy. Go on. What were you going to say? So, let's do that again. You start. I'll bounce to you.
That's why we get the big bucks. Hello, Gary.
Hello, Guy.
So you were saying that interesting fact to do with Marianne.
Oh, yeah, because we were talking about Marianne Faithfull a couple of weeks ago.
We were, yeah.
What were we talking about? Oh, yeah, because we had that clip of Marianne talking about the party that she met Mick Jagger at. And I looked a little bit deeper into whose party that was. She did mention, she said it's Adrian Poster, and I imagined a guy called Adrian. And then it's not. It's the actress Adrian Poster, spelled Posta.
And it's Adrienne.
Adrienne. And she had a single out at the time, and the party was for the single.
I heard. No, this is the thing. This is where we get into simpler times stuff. It was her 16th birthday party.
Right.
She did have a single out.
And she was managed by Andrew Lugo.
She was managed by, yeah. But so she was being managed at the age of 15. So it seems a bit...
You could leave school at 15 in those days, probably.
Well, that's true.
My dad left school at 15 and was working. And 14, I think my dad left school.
Yeah. You could get married at 11, couldn't you?
But, so imagine this party. You got Marianne sitting on the radiator. You've got Adrienne Poster there with Andrew Lou Goldham. You've got Andrew sees Marianne for the first time and decides she's going to be a superstar. You've got Mick arriving with Keith, and she spots him, even though Marianne is married at that point.
She's with John Dunbar.
Dunbar at that point. And also, who turns up is Peter Asher, who's the brother of Jane Asher, who's the girlfriend of Paul McCartney, who's also in the room.
That's right. But I think the thing to point out here is we've had 3 of the people at that party on Rockonteurs.
We have Peter Asher and Marianne Faithfull and Andrew Lou Goldham. Adrian Poster, I mean, I think I had a big crush on her when I was a kid, actually. She was in Budgie, wasn't she? Didn't she?
I think she was in Budgie, yeah. But it was that look.
Adam Faith's
It was that look. It was that
girlfriend.
slightly saucer-eyed that we just died for when we were
So she became
kids.
an actress after that.
Yeah.
She was going to be a singer. Anyway, we just thought we'd just elaborate on that party that Marianne mentioned 2 weeks ago now. So we got Mike Scott from the Waterboys on today.
Yeah. Who's got an amazing new album out, which is good.
I mean, crazy album, but I love the adventurousness of him. You know,
it's actually it's completely befitting its subject. If you know what I mean, it's kind of it's resonant.
So it's called Life, Death, and Dennis Hopper. And it's about the actor Dennis Hopper, obviously from Easy Rider, etc., etc. And
do you know that if is the middle word in life, man? He's full of that stuff.
Tell me some of his movies.
That's from Apocalypse Now. Well, there's so many. Actually, do you know one of my favourite films of his? He's not in. He directed. He directed Colours, the great LA gang film with Robert Duvall and Sean Penn.
Okay.
And he just directed that. No, he hadn't made. I mean, he
counterculturalist, really, wasn't he?
Counterculture, although surprisingly Republican, up until 2008 when he supported Barack.
Interesting.
Yeah, but of course Blue Velvet.
Yeah,
Rebel Without a Cause.
Yeah,
was his first film.
And anyway, so Mike's done an album with him, about him, and with Bruce Springsteen on it.
With a cast of an incredible cast: Steve Earle, Fiona Apple.
Anyway, we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about early beginnings and the Waterboys and some of the great music that Mike's made over the years.
He's a real journeyman. And hopefully what I really want to ask him about is, did he really see Spinal Tap with Mick Jones? Because he actually wrote a great song about Mick Jones, and he called London Mick.
Yeah? Well, let's get him on.
Welcome to the Rockonteurs.
Mike, thank you for coming in.
You're very welcome, Gary.
And
Thanks for having me.
Where have you come from? Where are you living?
I live in Dublin. I came over last night.
Amazing, because you travel so much. You live in so many different places.
My wife and little boy are in Tokyo. I've just been there. I was there last week. It was his 8th birthday. And my daughter and I went over for 4 nights. I'm still jet lagged. I'm double jet lagged. I'm still getting over the jet lag of arriving in Tokyo.
Yeah.
And I've doubled it by coming back.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going mad, Ted.
Because you've done a bit in Scotland. You've been in London, New York.
New York, yeah.
And is that part of how you is that part of your musical journey mostly? Are you led by music to a place?
Not always. I came back. I lived in Dublin in the 1980s, and after I left Dublin, I always missed it and wanted to go back. I loved living in Ireland, and I moved back in 2008, and then I became a dad in 2013. And I might have left Dublin by now, but because I'm a dad and my daughter's in Dublin and her mum lives in Dublin, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It sounds like from it that because you going to Dublin or going to, it was Dublin first, then the West Coast, that it was part of a musical journey, wasn't it? That kind of took you to Dublin.
Back then, yes.
Back then, yeah.
Yes.
And was that like the first? One gets the sense that maybe that was the first time you felt at home musically, like a place to, live or.
With Fisherman's Blues.
Yeah, I did feel very at home in Dublin, Guy. It was very friendly. It was easygoing as well. Very imaginative. It's a very creative environment in Ireland. It's kind of everybody's mad, and I like that.
Yeah, and just have a ludicrous. Someone pointed that it's so out of proportion the amount of Nobel prizes for literature that come out of Ireland,
and just the
size.
The amount of music there is. I mean, I love Dublin, and I lived there for about 10 months. In the 80s, wrote through the Barricades album there, and then I went back again when I did an album, my first solo album in '93, and used a lot of Irish musicians. Donal Lunny,
the great Donal Lunny.
Yeah.
Wow.
Donal's actually playing a bit of Baran on my
latest
album, but he there's a whole scene of folk revivalists around Planksty and Sharon Shannon later on.
Yes.
Did you work with Donal?
Sharon Shannon was in the Waterboys for a year, and I worked with Donal several times. He's the greatest living Irish musician. Capital G, capital L, I M.
Absolutely. And you wander around Ireland, and you just go in Dublin, I know that, but we went, didn't we, on a trip to Galway?
Yes.
But you wander around, and it's every pub, and there's music playing everywhere. And as a writer, you can't help but fall in love.
Yes. Yes, that's what happened to me.
And that's how you had to, because you had a massive cast of people going in and out of the Waterboys, haven't you?
Cast of members, more members than any band in the history of music, I think.
This is it. It's got its own Wikipedia page, hasn't it? The members of the Waterboys.
Nearest competitor, Santana.
But how many?
Is that true? Wow.
It's about 88 or 89 now. I'll have to check the Wikipedia page.
Wow. That's quite the accolade. Could you always remember who was in the band? Was it?
Pretty much, yeah.
I know you are on record as saying you can remember the name of every person who was in.
Probably, yeah.
But how does it work when someone goes in the Waterboys? Yeah. Do they know it's not forever? Do they know they're not fully a Waterboy? Are they? I guess they're paid a wage, but
the first rule of being in the Waterboys.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a funny thing, isn't it? It's almost like. It's part solo artist syndrome, because if it wasn't called the Waterboys and it was called Mike Scott, nobody would think about the members because I'd be a solo artist.
That's right, you can use who you want.
Yeah, but it is the Waterboys, and there is something about being a member of the Waterboys which is different from being a member of Mike Scott's band. There is a difference. And some people have stayed in the band for a long time. There's been a couple of 20-year people, there's some 10-year people, including just now. And some people...
Your fiddle player, obviously.
Yes, he's probably the longest one. He's not with us anymore. And then some people come and go very quickly. And I think people understand that that's what it is. It's not like the Beatles, where it's four guys and they got together at the beginning and they're still there at the end.
Yeah.
But I think there's probably an element, speaking as a musician, I think, is that the thing of, if people are in a band, then they feel they can chop stuff, and they're not waiting for you to tell them what to do, and they're not worried that that's going to be out of line.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what you're looking for, isn't it?
Definitely, yes. Yeah. And I co-write with the band members, and as band leader, part of my job is to give as little instruction as possible.
Right. But just tell me how it works. Is it sort of, you'll wander into a pub, you'll hear a little band playing, and you go, do you fancy being in the Waterboys? I mean, where do you find all these people?
Well, it's all different ways, Gary. Sometimes we put ads in Melody Maker and the NME.
That's old school.
Yeah. That's how we found Carl Wallinger, who was our first keyboard player.
I'd love to know what the wording of the ad was.
It was guitar player wanted. Must be into Iggy Pop or Patti Smith, and he phoned me up. In those days, you put your phone number in the ads. He phoned me up, this posh public school voice on the phone. He sounded a bit stoned as well, which he probably was. And he said, I like Iggy, but I'm not a guitarist, I'm a keyboard player. So he came down, and within about 10 seconds of playing piano, he'd got the job because he was so good.
But this is the brilliant thing about those ads, is that the people who answer those ads and are successful are never actually the person you're looking, don't actually fulfill what was looking.
But not one guitarist replied to that ad. Only Carl. And it's happened in a pub, I don't know, maybe once, twice, I don't know. Word of mouth as well. Or if we need someone, we need a drummer, then we'll ask all our mates or our musician mates, who would you recommend?
Does it grow out of the ideas you have for the album? Do you go and choose people that seem to suit the kind of songwriting style you're about to approach?
No, I don't think so.
Obviously, in Fisherman's Blues, you were after Celtic players.
Yes.
I mean, you had that amazing Sean Noss singer, didn't you?
Yes. No,
the old guy was
Tomas McKeown was his name, and he came a funny way. He had a cassette on sale in the local supermarket in Spiddle in the west of Ireland, this little village.
Just for anyone who doesn't know, Sean Noss is singing like Irish folk a cappella, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's old romantic airs, Irish airs, and he lived in Carrow, which was about 50 miles from the village where we were working, and he was this cassette in the grocer's shop, and I fancied checking out some of the local music. That's so amazing. I bought some cassettes, and when I listened to it, his voice was incredible. He was singing, and then when we needed a spoken voice, I remembered that guy on that tape from the grocer's shop, and so someone went and found him, and he came to the studio.
Yeah, that in itself is so Irish as well,
isn't it? Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about the new album.
Yes.
Because you've made this extraordinary album, Life and Death of Dennis Hopper. Life, Death, and Dennis Hopper.
Yes.
Get that right, yeah.
Because it's the life and times as well, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so, yeah.
And can I just say, it's very much in the spirit of Dennis Hopper. It feels like, listening to it, feels like you're in a road movie.
Okay.
It feels like you're on a journey, and it's kind of, and the guardrails are off.
Something. The first question is, what made you? I know you're actually. It's not unusual for you because you've been drawn to other artists to sing about before.
Yes.
Patti Smith, you were drawn to sing about her, and Yates
at the very beginning,
obviously.
Yeah.
And you're obviously fascinated by other artists' lives.
Yeah.
Tell me more. Why Dennis?
I was in Mayfair one time, Gary, and I'd walked down Savile Row. I must have been looking at shirts or something, and I came upon the Royal Academy at the bottom of Savile Row, at the big art gallery, and they had a poster in the window for something called The Lost Album by Dennis Hopper. And what on earth is that? And because of the word album, I wondered if there was something to do with music. Well, I went in, and it was an exhibition of his photography. I didn't know he was a photographer, and his photographs were brilliant.
He did the cover of River Deep Mountain High.
He did,
didn't he?
He did, yeah.
Did he? Yeah.
And he took very well-known photographs of people like Buffalo Springfield, Grateful Dead, which when you see them, you don't know that he took them, but he did.
I think I've seen a picture of him and Linda McCartney with cameras. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, his photographs were fantastic, and they were all from the 60s, and they were all black and white. And there was something about the artistry of the eye that had taken the photographs that interested me. It really blew me away. So I thought I've got to check out Dennis Hopper more. I knew him from, Easy Rider. I knew he was in Rebel Without a Cause. I knew he was considered to stand for the counterculture, but I'd never really explored his life. So I started reading biographies and checking him out and watching movies, filling in the gaps. And I got very interested in him as a guy.
So you get obsessed with people?
I wouldn't say obsessed, but very, very interested. Just for a while, hugely interested. Let's say that. And I wrote a song about him called Dennis Hopper, and it was a good fun song to write because every line rhymed with Hopper. He's sucking on a psychedelic pink gobstopper. He's that ain't a cowboy hat man. That ain't no topper, etc., etc. And we were going to put it out as a single. This is about 5 years ago. It was on an album that we did, and I thought, God, wouldn't it be great to have another couple of songs about Dennis Hopper that we could make a digital EP. So myself and one of the band members, Brother Paul, we got together and we concocted 2 more Dennis Hopper tracks. We had a nice little 3-track EP. But then this unexpected thing happened. 3 of the other members of the band went into the drummer's home studio. The drummer was Ralph Salmons. You might know him.
Ralph, yeah. I know Ralph. I've played with Ralph a lot. Yeah.
Well, he has a home studio, and the 3 of them got together and they recorded 7 instrumentals without telling me anything. And they sent me the instrumentals in a zip file.
And the bill. No.
No bill. No bill. It was one of the most wonderful things. 7 beautiful instrumentals. Can you put lyrics to these? What a gift. And I love putting lyrics to other people's music because I get bored with my own chord sequences and the way I hear music. It's wonderful to do it with someone else's music. And the timing of it, the way these instrumentals arrived, just from I was thinking about Dennis Hopper songs, suddenly sparked a whole lot of other Dennis Hopper lyrics. Oh, this would suit this, or this would suit this period in his life. Suddenly, I was sitting on 10 Dennis Hopper tracks, and I realised it's not a digital EP, it's an album. And so that it all led from that.
Did some of those instrumentals remain as instrumentals? Because I know on the album there's a different instrumental for each one of his wives, isn't there?
No, all those instrumentals became songs. Like Hopper's on Top, Peruvian Blues, I Don't Know How I Made It. Those are 3 of them.
Because what I like about the record is, and why it doesn't sound like stuff you've done before either, is you seem to choose the right music for the period.
Okay.
So there's definitely a swing kind of vibe at the beginning, and then there's the sort of lounge music for one of the wives, and there's early rock and roll, as it were, and country.
Yeah.
Was that was all conscious?
It was actually mostly organic, Gary. There was a couple of tracks where I thought, okay, we've got to put this in this kind of musical style or vernacular, but most of it just kind of happened, and I noticed that there was a kind of alchemy to it, with the song about Andy Warhol sounded like it was the early 60s, and I didn't mess with it. I just let it happen.
And what about the frankly incredible guests that you've got on?
Yeah.
How did that? Was that a song suggested them, or because like Steve Earle, you'd been working with before, hadn't you? Or...
I knew Steve a little bit, and we'd sung together a couple of times on stage. And I'd written that lyric, Kansas. It's the start of the album. It's about Dennis's boyhood, and I'd put music to it myself, and it wasn't working. It wasn't American enough. I needed something that sounded like the plains, a Midwestern. It needed to sound like Kansas. So who would do that? Oh, Steve Earle would do that great. And we've got the same manager, so it was easy to put it together. And he recorded it. It was brilliant. And the original idea was that he would write the music, but I would sing it. But his voice was so great, I stepped back, and so he's the first singer on the
co-written,
album.
or is that
my words, his music?
I got it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And the others? Fiona Apple? That's a vocal.
Yes, indeed. Well, do you know Dave Bates, the veteran A&R man?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was in touch with him, and he was asking me what I was doing, and I told him I'm working on this album about Dennis Hopper. He asked to hear it. I sent him what was at that time the latest version, and he emailed me back. It was all by email, and he said, I like the album, but are you doing all the voices? And at that stage, apart from Steve Earle, I was every voice in the album. Yeah. Funny voices, different voices, and he said, I really think you should open some of those up and get some guests to do those spoken vocals and have different voices, not just you. And at first, I didn't like the idea because I liked the way I'd done the bits, but then I thought, no, he's absolutely right. There's too much of me. So it's a bit of a blessing, really. And so I started identifying bits that could be given to other people. And I'd always liked Bruce Springsteen's voiceovers. You know, if you've heard bootlegs of Bruce, where he would do a song and then he would do a long story at the end of the song.
Well, the Broadway show is
okay.
Is fantastic.
Yes, and so I thought, well, Bruce would be great for it. And it was one particular voiceover at the end of a song called 10 Years Gone, and my manager knows his, so the contact was made, and Bruce said yes.
That's amazing.
To my delight.
Come on, I mean, everyone could sit here and we'd love to get Bruce on my record.
Yeah,
but to actually make it.
What's funny is that this is all through sort of official channels. It's it's amazing that can work.
Did you met Springsteen?
I met him once after a gig, Gary, a Waterboys gig, when fortunately I hadn't known he was in the audience. And he came back afterwards and said he'd enjoyed the show and so on, and it was really nice. Wow. So I knew that memory of that contact would be there, and he said okay, and he recorded it. He did I had already done it, so he had a demo to work from, and he recorded it in his own studio, and he sent me 3 takes, and I got to choose from them. In fact, I think I might have edited between 2 takes, and that was it.
Because obviously he would have related to your Americana style, and he did albums that not that dissimilar to the kind of music you've also explored. And,
well, I was a huge fan of Bruce Springsteen when I was a kid, and devoured those albums like E Street Shuffle and Born to Run. And, my God,
I was wondering this the other day, actually. We were having a chat, and I wonder what you thought about the fact that the golden age of any single artist is always usually when they're in their 20s. When they're the least experienced, when they have the least to draw upon for lyrics.
Yes.
When their songwriting is okay, but it's not matured.
Yeah.
When they're older, they tend to write better songs, but have less success. Do you think there's an argument there?
Well,
Because there's more to get out of the well when you're older.
I think a lot of it is who you're talking to. When you're older, you're talking to people with experience. When you're young, you're talking to people who are looking for any outside voice.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's
a fire. There's a fire when you're in your 20s, a fire of discovery and excitement and youthful energy.
Yeah.
But then you get someone like Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan's lyrics in the 60s, like Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, Times Are Changing, incredibly mature. But he still writes good stuff, but those lyrics are better than what he writes now.
What did you think of the movie?
I didn't see it. I don't want to. Don't want to see it. I don't like biopics. Yeah. They play too loose with the truth.
You like biopic albums?
It's a different medium.
Yeah. But, in that sense, what parts of Dennis's life did you decide to choose when you were writing the songs? And did you go... It's chronological, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I went for colourful bits that appealed to me or that I felt there was a narrative there. And I never changed anything factual. I did an album of W.B.H.'s poems set to music, and I set myself a rule. Thank you. I set myself a rule, even though I would maybe flip around a verse order or something, or change the rhyming system to make it work in a song format. The golden rules, I'd never change what I perceived to be the poet's intention. And with the Dennis material, I could take different angles on his story, but I would never change a fact. I'd never change something for my convenience. So,
but then I guess you don't really need to do that because you're not following a kind of narrative story arc. You haven't got to go, oh my God, we've got 3 characters here and we've only got 3 minutes, so we need to make those 2 people one person.
Yeah, and there's a lot of freedom in making a record as well.
And how did you put the record together? What were the musicians and how did it?
A lot of it was done just before or during COVID, Gary. So there was a lot of emailing sound files and people doing stuff in their home studios and putting it together. And for a lot of stuff, I used 2 Nashville musicians. Greg Morrow is a drummer, Mike Brignardello, the bass player, and they did a lot of stuff in their home studios and they would send it to me. And sometimes they'd be sitting in the studio and I'd be sending the emails saying, could you just do this a little bit different? And he'd be in the studio and 10 minutes later I'd get another take. And it's wonderful being able to work like that.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I mean, everyone works, a lot of people work remotely now.
Yeah. We had a couple of tracks, and of course all the ones that were done on that secret session that the band members did, which were done in studios with people actually assembled together. So there's a bit of that in the record too.
Because you're very much, I would have thought, especially with the ethos of the Waterboys, you're very much about that, aren't you? Isn't it about people in a room? I would have thought.
Yeah. But these days we've found how to work by email as well, and the guys have all got their home studios. And
I just hate having to engineer myself. That's the thing I hate. Having to.
But you're putting the band together to go and do this live. Is it going to be an easy album to do live? Is it? Did you ever think when you're making the record, how am I going to translate this onto stage?
No.
Or you don't worry about that?
No, I don't think about it until it's done.
Yeah.
And with this one, do you know what we're going to do? You remember Tommy by The Who?
Oh yes,
great concept album. And when they toured it, they had a very clever shape of show. I studied the old set lists. I remember having bootlegs of their tour from '69. They'd come on and they would do half an hour of Substitute, Can't Explain and so on, the well-known numbers. Then they'd do about 40 minutes of Tommy, not the whole album, but enough to give the arc of the story, ending in See Me, Feel Me, that incredible track. And then they would do another half hour, My Generation, Magic Bus, and everybody went home happy. And I thought, that's the way to do it. I'm not going to hit people with nothing but Dennis Hopper. We'll do half an hour of stuff that the audience is familiar with. Then we'll do enough of the Hopper album to give the story. And then we'll do another half hour. So that's what we're going to do.
Great. Let's, can we talk about how you as a young man and how you were inspired by music and how you began and where you lived? You come from Scotland?
I grew up in Edinburgh. I was in Edinburgh till I was 12, and then I lived in Ayr on the west coast of Scotland, a smaller town, when I was a teenager. And I started buying records in 1968. That was the year I already liked music before. I remember She Loves You and so on the radio. But the year I came on to music, seriously, was 68. And it was records like Mony Mony by Tommy James and the Shondells.
I actually want to interject here, if I may, because you're on record. Because I went and listened to this because you were on record saying the first record you bought was Last Night.
It was.
In Soho,
it was. Yes.
And I went and I looked it up and I listened to it and I had quite a mind. I thought this might be relevant to you. Quite a mind-blowing discovery. The intro to that song. What does that remind you of?
Jumping Jack Flash.
No, it's London Calling.
Up on.
Who's it by? Hang on.
Dave Dido's.
Oh, Dave
Dido's,
Dido's.
yeah.
Wasn't the Edgar Wright movie called like that
Yes,
as well?
yeah.
That's where you got the
But
title
I don't
from.
think it's in it. I don't know if it's...
It is those two chords.
It is.
It's like a minor
it's
to a
like
major.
the bass riff. It's like the bass riff.
Wow, I'm going to listen again.
Which brings me to another quick sidebar I want to get a little, because it's one of the most fantastically rock and roll things ever. Did you see Spinal Tap with Mick Jones?
I did, yes.
Come on.
In the Electric Cinema.
Oh, come on.
Neither of us laughed once. Do you know what it was? For me...
It was too close. It was too close.
No, it wasn't that.
Well.
I couldn't believe that any musicians were as stupid as those guys. And then later, I remembered an incident where I'd been in a hotel with Carl from the band, and we'd smoked a bit of reefer. It was in Paris, and we'd got lost in our hotel. It was a big hotel, big old hotel in Paris. We'd got lost wandering the corridors, and we're wandering around. It was a kind of blissful experience because we were out of it and nobody was dependent on us being anywhere.
You're safe.
Yeah, and we're walking around completely lost, knowing we're lost, enjoying it. And then suddenly two guys appeared out of nowhere at the side and we jumped out of our skins and we looked around. It was a mirror. And I realised it was more tap than tap.
Can't believe they let them in. Oh, it's us.
Sorry,
There's that moment, isn't there, in all of our... when we were all kids, and you make a decision musically, I want to be the singer, I want to be the songwriter, I want to be the guitarist, I want to be the sideman.
Yeah.
What do you remember of that?
My dad gave me my first guitar when I was 9, and I didn't learn to play it for a couple of years. Suddenly chords started to happen. Someone showed me E, A, and B7, and suddenly I was off. And I always just thought, I'm going to be a musician. I'm probably going to write my own songs. That's going to be it.
And did you start writing straight away?
Yeah, more or less. Terrible songs. I used to write one a day. And after about 7 years, they began to get a bit better, and then I had my first bands and so on.
But hang on, before that, there's a trip to London, isn't there, with your first recording experience? Isn't that before
That was
you
in
were
1976. I was 17 years old, and I already had my own little bands.
Oh, you did have a band? Okay, 'cause
yeah.
I thought this was before you were writing, when you recorded them.
No, I was already writing my own songs, and I fancied doing a recording. There was an ad in the back of Melody Maker, a studio at Portobello Studios. And I used to go on holiday every summer with my mum. We would always come to London every year.
Holiday to London.
Yeah, all the way to London. And I had an aunt and uncle.
How many times can you go around Madame Tussauds?
Never. I had an aunt and uncle who lived in Hornchurch, and I used to go and stay
fantastic.
with them. So I knew Romford and the East End a bit.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Actually, no, the East End.
Well, it was another world for me. It was exciting. It was novelty, you see. And at the bottom of my uncle and aunt's house was the train that went to Upminster Bridge. You know, there was a little byline. There was a train used to go to Upminster Bridge.
So you say that as if that's something we should know.
No, it was the Romford to Upminster line. That was what it was. It's just these.
Okay.
It was novelty to me.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm trying to think if there was some famous old blues that we should have done Romford to Upminster.
It's triggering memories. You see,
Right.
my aunt and uncle once took me to a musical in Romford that was put on by a local troupe, and they had this romantic young singer came and did a song called "The Seasonal Beauty of Essex," and there was also a comedy song about the Romford to Upminster line. This is what it's all shooting off in my mind.
Right.
Where were we? We're on my first studio experience.
First studio experience, yeah.
Well, I saw this ad in Melody Maker, Portobello Studios, and I thought, well, I'm going to be on holiday, so I'll book a studio. And I phoned up the studio and I said, I'm going to do one song. It's 6 minutes long. It's going to have 5 instruments. I'll need half an hour, please. And he said, no, you'll need more than that. So we booked 2 or 3 hours. And I got to London. I was at Ladbroke Grove Tube Station. He told me it's at Ladbroke Grove Tube Station. And I came out of the Tube Station and I was completely prepared musically. I'd got all that together, but I didn't have the address of the studio. I was completely spaced out. And I remember walking out of Ladbroke Grove Tube Station, and there was a black dude with a yellow Motley Hoople t-shirt. I remember it like yesterday, Motley Hoople. And I said, do you know where the studio is? And he said, yeah, man. He said, up there. And he pointed me up Lancaster Road. Now I know it's Lancaster Road. Then it was just the road that he was pointing up. So my mum and I walked up. My mum was with me, taking care of me. Yeah. And we crossed the famous Portobello Road, and then we came to a big building. It looked like a converted church, and there was a big open double door, and it looked like it might be a studio.
No.
I walked in and I said, is this a studio? Yes, said the girl. And I said, well, I've got some studio time booked. Oh, what's your name? Mike Scott. Oh, no, we've no record of you. And of course, it was Island Studios.
It was Basing Street. That's
Basing
right, yeah.
Street, yeah.
Or Psalm West, as it became.
Yeah. And she kindly told me where tiny subterranean Portobello Studios was. It was on Lancaster Road, and I went there. And
I think I remember it. I think it lasted till the 80s, I think.
Oh, I don't know. It was an American. He was the first American I'd ever met, called Joseph. He was the engineer, and he very kindly offered to play bass. He said, it'll save you some time, and it did. And I recorded my funny songs.
You played drums. Did you play drums?
I did. I recorded a version of Like a Rolling Stone. That was the 6-minute song that was going to have 5 instruments, you see.
So Dylan was your man, right?
Yeah, and I played piano and sang live, and then over to guitar, Joseph played bass, and I did the drums. It was terrible, man. But it was an experience.
The most exciting thing in the world, though, isn't it? When first time you hear recorded music, was it?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't exciting, Guy. No, because you see, I naively thought I was going to walk into a studio and it would all sound like the Beatles on Abbey Road immediately. I didn't realise you had to get sounds, and they had an electric piano. Well, I'd played piano before, but never Fender Rhodes. And it sounded like plinky. It sounded all weird. And the drums didn't sound like they sounded on records. So it was a rude awakening. And then at the end of the session, and I had to come back the next day because I ran out of town, and all my holiday money was gone. It cost much more, because you see, as I learned that day, at the end of every good musical experience, there's a smiling man who comes to take your money. There was a studio manager, an English bloke, who came and smiled at me and took 240 quid off me, or whatever it was.
So kids.
Yeah.
But eventually you do find a band, don't you? You end up...
Yeah.
John Peel sessions, famously.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. First record, I had a band called Another Pretty Face in Edinburgh, and we made 4 or 5 singles. And
what was the kind of musical references at that
what's
point?
The scene, I was thinking?
Yeah.
Well, it was a punk new wave time, so we played everything fast and edgy like that. And of course, I loved things like the Stones and Bob Dylan and 60s soul music. So that was all in my background, but that wasn't really what we were playing then. I suppose it was The Clash, Lou Reed, music like that.
Because the 60s soul, you mentioned that, and that's something that is very obvious in your music, you know, with the brass sections that you love, and there's always that feel that you have to your music, that combination of Dylan and soul.
Yeah, well, you know, we grew up, all of us, with that music on the radio, and even without thinking about it, even without thinking, I'm a soul music fan, it's going in all the time. And I loved all that music.
Yeah,
But there is
Motown
that-
Chartbusters albums.
Yes, exactly.
Well.
Yes.
I mean, we're gonna mention the big music, as it were.
Yeah.
But that sense of evangelical that I get from a lot of your songs, do you recognise that?
Yeah, maybe so. Idealistically
Inspirational.
so, yeah. Yeah, maybe so.
Is that something that you noticed early on, that you wanted to write that big music, especially at the beginning, the Waterboys became known for?
Yeah. Not really. You know, I think it happened. I did like big cinematic rock music like Bruce Springsteen. That sort of symphonic scale sound like Backstreets and Jungleland. My God, did I love those. But when I went into the studio...
Did you have a band called Jungleland?
No, I had a fanzine called Jungleland.
That's it.
Yeah.
And was that because of the song, by the way?
Well, it was titled because of the song. Yeah, it was in 77. When I first went into the studio working with the Waterboys, I discovered the joys of multi-tracking my own instruments and doing multiple rhythm guitars and so on. And if I put a rhythm guitar on each side, full stereo, and a piano in between them, it sounded big, and I just dug that.
That's a natural Spectre sort of
I
thing
guess
you've got
so.
there, isn't it?
Yeah. And I realised that if I played the acoustic guitars very soon after each other, when I played the second one, you've probably had this experience yourself, I could remember every nuance of the first performance, and on the second one I could play little comments on it, and sometimes play absolutely with it, and sometimes play against it, and that made it sound like two blokes who were really in tune with each other, and I just loved that.
Yeah. But there was just something that, I mentioned evangelical, or, I mean, obviously you write that track, Big Music, and there are other songs like it.
Yeah.
And I can hear the stuff that Bono would have been inspired by. Do you sense your inspiration on other artists?
Now and then I can hear it in U2's records. Post the Big Music, I can hear it.
Big Music, absolutely.
Yeah, I hear it on theirs.
Yeah, I mean, find what I'm looking for.
Yeah, definitely.
Because there's something so brilliant about that track, the Big Music, right? There's something so brilliant about the lyrics of that track.
Thank you.
It seems to me is about being taken up by nature.
Yeah, that's it, really. Yeah,
by seeing that in almost as your God, as your religion.
Yeah,
being embraced by nature.
Yeah, I didn't mean to make it sound so big. I kind of got there in the recording process, and it wasn't meant to sound as big as that. And when I hear it, I'm almost embarrassed by the size of it. It fits the lyrics, yes. I guess it does.
You talk about mountains,
I guess, but now, if I was doing it now, I would make the music not do that, to make more of a twist on it.
But you talking earlier. You mentioned about the vitality of youth.
That's true. You've got me. It's a fair cop, Gov.
But then you're on this journey that goes for a long time, because I don't want to leapfrog too much, but one place I really want to get to is somewhere I only heard about recently, which is it Find or Findhorn? Findhorn.
Yeah.
Which I recently found out about from My Dinner with Andre, the film.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. You know about this?
No, I don't. But I know about Findhorn, but I don't know about My Dinner with Andre. When did you have that?
What?
When did you have a dinner with Andre?
No, the film. They talk at great length about it.
Yeah, right.
And it was recently burnt down, wasn't it?
Because it was a commune, as it were, wasn't it?
Two buildings were burnt down. It's a community, spiritual community. A disgruntled former employee who took it out on the community. Yes, he burned the community centre and the community sanctuary. Yes.
Oh.
And my ex-wife lives in our old house next door to the community sanctuary, and if the wind had blown a different way, our house and possibly my ex-wife could have got burned.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Wow. So I wasn't best pleased about it.
Wow.
I think what Guy and I are both kind of looking for is your sense of spirituality that infiltrates your music and is part of your search.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah. Yeah. I write about it in a very different way now, but yes. Yes.
I mean, where did you go to find that? Was that one of the reasons you go to Ireland? Was that one of the reasons you go to Findhorn?
Ireland, I just went because I didn't have a place to stay, and the fiddler who lived in Dublin invited me to stay, and I fell in love with the place. So it wasn't from any spiritual reason, more musical really. But when I lived in London in the 80s, I got turned on to esoteric literature. I remember going to the philosophy room in Foyle's bookshop. It was up in the top floor in those days, and finding all this wealth of literature about spirituality and religion that wasn't British Isles Christianity. It was a wonderful discovery. That
Theosophites, Rosicrucians.
All of that. Yeah. It was so great. And for a long time, that was my spiritual food. And then I I was living in America, and I had a summer rental in Woodstock, that lovely town with lots of new age shops.
I've never been there. I'd love to go.
Okay. It's a real cute town, and I was in one of the shops there, and there was a video of the Findhorn community, and I bought it and I watched it, and it was an elderly lady, talking about her spiritual experiences, and it's like, you know, the Bob Dylan song "Tangled Up in Blue." Every one of them words rang true, like it was written in my soul. It was one of those experiences, and I was blown away by what she was saying. And I thought, what is this Findhorn place? So I read up about it, read all the books I could, and I went there a few months later and did what was an introductory program, a week's program, staying in the community. It was a kind of spiritual university where you would go and you could stay there for a week or
it's
3
not
months.
affiliated with it. Is it just a sort of general umbrella of, or is it
It's got its own.
doctrine?
It's got its own spiritual principles.
Right.
The basic principle is that the thing that we call God or the sacred or whatever is locatable inside one, and that definitely worked for me, and I had great experiences there.
That's sort of Neoplatonic, isn't it?
I don't know.
Well, that kind of idea, Plato idea of, you know,
Okay.
God is in
Okay.
you. And of course, you know, the Romantics with Byron and Shelley, who that you're very close to what they
Okay.
believed in, really.
Okay.
But, you know, I think it would have drawn you to Yeats, wouldn't it? Because Madame Blavatsky,
Yes,
you
all
know,
the
and all the
esoterics,
theosophy.
yes.
You know, Yeats was into
Yes.
all of this, wasn't
Yes,
he? He was
indeed.
into that spirituality and
Yes.
raising spirits in rooms and
Yes, I don't really go along with all that side. I think it was a glamour that was upon them at the time, but yes.
believing in fairies.
Yes. Well, fairies now, maybe there are other sides of reality that we can't see with our five senses that maybe are on a spectrum beyond our vision. I could believe that.
I feel like we've jumped the two big singles that changed your life. in a way, you know, that's your first hit.
No, because what's interesting is what's interesting. So much is interesting. The Whole of the Moon, Big Bone, which is part of the big music period.
Yeah.
But that's not when people know it from.
And there was a hit much later.
It was hit much later
Yeah.
because it became, and this is something that really is that it was because of the rave scene.
That's right.
That it was a come down thing. But it's not really, because what gets me, because it's not really, because it's a pretty strident song. It's like, I remember everyone was into kind of Shine On You Crazy Diamond and stuff.
Yeah.
But that was an amazing thing to get picked up on. How did that feel?
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. People started telling me it's getting played at now. I don't know how to say this. Balearic? How do you say? Balearic. It's getting played at Balearic discos and raves. People would tell me, oh, brilliant. And it had been deleted as a single. You see, it had come out and hadn't been a big hit in '85. It stiffed somewhere in a lower reaches of the
26,
chart.
Really?
26.
I remember when it first came out. I thought it was on the radio a lot.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then it was deleted as a single, and we changed labels. And I think it was still on the album, of course, but the single fell out of catalogue, and it became a kind of cult record. It was expensive if you got the original 12-inch and so on. I remember going into a record shop in Liverpool and seeing it for 25 quid. And it was clear we needed to reissue it. And we did a compilation album when we left that label, and as part of that campaign, they re-released the single.
Right.
Yeah. And do you remember Rob Dickens? He was the A&R man at Warner's. Yeah. I met him at a party shortly before Hole in the Moon was re-released. And he said, oh, you're the bloke from the Waterboys? Yes. And he said, oh, we've just recorded The Hole of the Moon with Terry Reid. You know, if you'd recorded it properly. Terry Reid, the great Terry Reid.
We've had Terry Reid on the show, who nearly sung for Led Zeppelin. Yeah.
Well, Rob said to me, you know, if you'd recorded it properly, you'd have had the hit, but we're going to have the hit. And I thought, I'm not going to tell him because he'll just move his release date forward. So I said nothing and said it well. And then we had the hit.
And did Terry release it?
Yes.
I've never heard that version.
No,
It's good. Very good.
Wow.
Was part of the reason why it didn't succeed the first time round? Wasn't it because you wouldn't go on Top of the Pops? Is that true?
It's a bit of a myth. They did ask us to do Top of the Pops. We were on tour in America at the time. We were playing in Boston on the night that Top of the Pops would have been filmed. So we couldn't do it anyway. But there is a story behind that. You see, I was a huge fan of The Clash, and Joe Strummer, he was one of my great heroes. And I remember talking to Joe after a Clash gig and talking to him about Top of the Pops, and The Clash wouldn't play Top of the Pops. And I remember saying to him, well, if my band ever does well, Joe, we're not going to play Top of the Pops either. And he looked at me and he said, that makes two of us.
But the trouble with that was, and I know it was good old Joe, and also hats off for London Mick. What a great song!
Thank you.
Is that all that happened was that when the Clash did have a hit that was so big they had to be on top of the pops, they just got Legs and Co. Which is the last thing
to
you
bank
want.
robber.
They put their video on.
Yeah.
I mean, I get because there was always two camps with Top of the Pops, wasn't there? There was sort of Led Zeppelin changed it by saying they were never going to release singles, therefore they weren't going to go on Top of the Pops. So you were either
that was their song was the theme. Ironically,
Yeah.
or you were either that camp, weren't you, or you were. I grew up loving Top of the Pops. Bowie changed my life doing Ziggy Stardust. I want to be on Top of the Pops.
Yes, that's right.
Sure.
That's right.
Sure. But that's the whole of the moon. Which, by the way, confession, we did a sort of listeners' questions last week, and one of the questions to us both was, "What's name a song that you would have loved to have written or played on?" And I did actually say "Whole of the Moon." So
Thank you.
even just to play bass on it, the bass on it. It's
Do you know the
fantastic.
bass is on synthesizer?
Yeah, I know it is, but it would have been great to play it anyway.
Yeah.
Just like,
Yeah.
throw that in. Also, it's one of those perfect lyrics I love the story of where the lyric came from. It was like it was
Tell it.
Tell it.
I was in New York. Is the beginning of 1985. It was very cold, I remember, and I was with a girlfriend and was staying in the Gramercy Park Hotel.
Yes.
And we were walking back to the hotel, and my girlfriend said, "Is it easy to write songs?" And so I got shown off my girlfriend. I said, "Yes, it's dead easy," which is not. But anyway, I told her it was, and I brought an envelope or a piece of paper out of my pocket, and I had a pen, and I cast it around for inspiration. There was a moon in the sky. Now, today, I no longer remember if it was a crescent or a full moon, but I did at one stage look up a gazetteer or an almanac and found out which it was, but I've forgotten again, so it doesn't really matter. Anyway, there was a moon, and I wrote down the line, "I saw the crescent, you saw the whole of the moon."
It's a beautiful line. Though.
Thank you. And when we got back to the hotel, I showed it to my girlfriend, she was impressed. We got back to the hotel, I expanded it into maybe a verse or something, and when I got home to London, over a period of time, I wrote the song.
And I'm hoping you told her it was about her.
No, it wasn't about her.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I want to go back to when you did Girl Called Johnny, because that was your first kind of major hit.
It was the first Waterboys record, and it wasn't really a hit. It was a hit in France, of all places, but not in the UK.
That's fitting, actually, for the subject matter.
Yeah, but I hear that, I remember that song being...
a lot on the radio.
It was a lot on the radio.
Yeah.
But what an unusual lyric choice as well. It was about Patti Smith, wasn't it?
Loosely, yes.
So tell me where the lyric came from.
She had a song called Redondo Beach. It was on her first album, Horses, and I had a live tape of her, an early version where she had the line, "A girl named Johnny." Now, she got it from somewhere. It didn't begin with her. She got it from a Jane Birkin film, The Ballad of Johnny Jane, with Serge Gainsbourg as a movie where she was the girl called Johnny. So it's got this provenance. So I took the title and wrote a lyric based on the title, and very loosely based on my fandom of Patti Smith, but a lot of it, I couldn't say this line's about Patti Smith, but some of it, maybe half of it, would be inspired by her. And I remember I put it to a piano tune. I was living in a flat in Edinburgh at the time, and the neighbours would go mad because I'd played piano for so long, and it was an upright piano, so it must have been terribly loud in their apartment. And when I got that it's a cyclical riff, it just goes round and round and round. I must have played it for hours. And it was produced by Rupert Hine. Yeah, in his studio at Farmyard in Buckinghamshire.
I can hear a lot of hunky-dory on that.
Yes, I hear that too. And it's actually the same rhythm, I think, as The Prettiest Star.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was on a later album.
Definitely that influence, yes.
But yeah, and I suppose, there's Bowie writing about Andy Warhol.
Yeah, and Bob Dylan also in Hunky Dory. Yeah.
So actually, that's another inspiration for you, isn't it? I can write about these. I can do little mini biographies that are inspired by other people.
Yeah.
I think I might write a song called Mike Scott.
But then become an album.
It's amazing how we're just all we're our musical DNA is so much of what we were listening to as kids, and it gives us license to try different things.
Yes.
And here you are all these years later. You start off, your first hit is about a famous American, and now you're making an album About a famous American.
Yes. Do you know what else? A Girl Called Johnny is the rhythm of Heaven Must Have Sent You by the Elgins. One of my favourite records.
Stuff,
Do you know that record? Fantastic record.
Just want to briefly talk about Yeats, don't we? Because
Yep.
Guy and I wrote a musical many years ago, 20 odd years ago, about Maud Gonne.
Okay.
And we got very into that whole subject.
Yes.
We went
to the Abbey Theatre. We went to Galway.
We went to Galway, actually. We walked into a pub and Sharon Shannon was playing.
Okay.
Who's I know plays accordion on early Waterboys.
Yeah.
But and we got really into that whole, as we were mentioning earlier, his sort of religion and.
But what's funny is that with you doing those poems, which is fantastic, because when we started writing this piece, Yeats had literally just come out of copyright, and so it was open season. You could use any of the poems, and then we aligned with the EU, and it went back into copyright. So and you had to completely forget using anything.
Did you have to pay the estate when you used those?
The very first time when we did The Stolen Child on Fisherman's Blues, we got permission from the estate and had to pay a royalty, a chunk of the I think it was half of the copyright, because it was the lyrics and we'd put the music to it. Yeah. So we had the copyright and the music and Yeats had the lyrics. But when we did the album, he was out of copyright.
Because I never saw the show, but you went to the Abbey Road Theatre, which was his theatre.
We did. He founded the Abbey Theatre.
The Abbey, sorry, not the Abbey Road Theatre. The Abbey Theatre.
Yep. He and his colleagues founded the Abbey Theatre.
Right,
and my dream was to perform it there. And we did 5 nights, a semi-theatrical
show. And how was
show.
the show? So what happened in the show?
Well, it was unlike the Dennis Hopper tour that we're going to do. It was all Yeats. And it was a sequence of about 20 numbers. And it was a 9-piece band with some theatrical lighting and theatrical touches. There was a bit where we did a song where one of the band members played one of those funny old-style accordion-type organs that come in a box. And he would come on stage.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, he came on stage, he walked on with it like a little briefcase, put it down on the stage. I'm singing
harmonium.
Yeah, and I'm singing the first verse of the song. Well, he comes on and the light comes on him and he's opening it out and he sets it up. And just as he finishes setting it up, he starts playing. Things like little tactical touches, more or less, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And how did it feel being on? Did it feel kind of
amazing, legendary? Yeah.
Who was the woman that opened it all those years ago? There was a
Lady Gregory.
Lady Gregory. Yeah. Wow. This is beyond Rockonteurs, obviously, but definitely an era, an age that we were really, got very much involved with.
Yes. And what happened to it? Did it come out?
Yeah, we did a few workshops. It was tricky.
Okay.
I mean, it's quite a dark subject, and. Just doing, it was about a musical about unrequited love, because it was an amazing love story between them,
But also the microcosm of it, of like this love, sparks. I mean, it's leading up to 1916.
Mm-hmm.
But Shane Connaughton wrote the libretto for us, who wrote My Left Foot.
Okay.
Around the country.
So you're going to take this on the road.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about the tour.
First show is on May the 1st. We're doing about 6 weeks around the UK and Ireland, then summer festivals, and we're off to the North America and then Europe after that towards the end of the year.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And how do you go down in America?
We're not so well known in America, Gary. We never went there enough back in the 80s when we were new. And so we do all right in some places and battling in others.
I had you down for being, very, very accepted, kind of quite a bit, because you get a lot of covers from American artists, don't you?
Yeah, if they know our music, yeah. But
who's covered you, mate?
Dawes, Fiona Apple, the Decemberists, or the singer from the Decemberists, Prince.
What did Prince cover?
He covered The Whole of the Moon.
Did he? I've never heard
2 different versions.
Oh, my word.
He did a piano vocal version at Ronnie Scott's. I've never heard it. Nobody's got a tape of it.
Wow.
Just on his own. I'd love to hear that. Wow. And he did a drum and bass funk rearrangement of it, which is on YouTube.
What an honour.
Amazing.
Well, actually, I'll tell you one song of yours, which is a great example of someone who can really make something his own, is Rod Stewart's.
Oh, yeah. What do you want me to do? Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Do you know that was Rob Dickens coming back into the story?
You go. Right.
He was the A&R man for that album.
And have you ever written songs specifically just for someone else?
A few times. Thea Gilmore asked me for a song one time, and I wrote a song for her, but she didn't use it. So it doesn't really work for me writing for other people, I think.
No, you write for your own voice.
I write for myself, but if other people pick it up, that's good.
Well, good luck with your record.
Thank you
Mike.
so much, Gary.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah,
Thanks,
really,
fellas.
really
My
great
pleasure.
talking to you, Mike. Really,
Thanks,
really enjoyed
this
that.
guy.
Thank you.
Lovely. Wonderful stuff. I'm going to keep that.
Is that okay for you?
Well, that was lovely, wasn't it?
Yeah, I got the feeling you might believe in fairies.
But the thing is, Gary, we also know that you're very much weighted in that area, and you're always looking for someone else to talk about fairies.
Do you know what's funny is that in those days of Yeats, people believed in fairies. You got taken away by fairies, where nowadays people believe in aliens and you get taken away by aliens.
That's very true. But there was that thing, wasn't it, of all the fake photos that someone set up?
Yeah.
It was a
yeah,
big...
I've forgotten those.
I still believe them.
I think it's a nice... I was speaking to my son the other day, actually, Rex, my youngest, and we were walking in the woods, and I said, do you remember did you actually believe in fairies when you were a kid? He said, I did. Believed in fairies and the tooth fairies and all of that. And I just thought, that is wonderful. Imagine just being that, in the,
Do you know, it's funny you say that, because last time outside our village, right, there was a fairy festival, obviously with an E.
FAE.
And it was interesting how it is obviously being co-opted, and there's like it's a bit fairy, it's a bit new age, bit goth. There's a bit of goth in there.
Right, yeah, of course.
And so it's interesting how the whole kind of fairy
White
ethos.
goths.
No. There was some quite gothy goths.
Anyway, we'll finish this discussion on fairies. And
Goth fairies.
And yeah, he was great. I really enjoyed that.
No,
And,
really
and
good.
we'll see you all next week. And thank you to Ben Jones, Gimme Sugar, for producing today's episode. And don't forget to subscribe.
And watch the video on YouTube.
Yeah.
Again and again and again.
And we'll see you next week. It's good night from me.
And good night from them.